Our headlines this Friday afternoon, August 25th here in Seoul. Japan has been discharging its first batch of treated wastewater from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The IAEA has sent inspectors on site to assess safety standards. South Korea will also send its own team of experts there every 2 weeks to get real-time updates. South Korea's ambassador to the U.S. gives a positive evaluation of the Camp David summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. He says the summit paved the way for a strong trilateral partnership, which may be stronger than other security pacts made with other countries till now. Former U.S. President Donald Trump surrenders at a jail in Georgia. This is his fourth arrest, but this time he has been booked on election-related charges. He's the first ever former U.S. president to have his mugshot taken. Welcome to Friday's edition of the Daily Report. We begin over in Japan. Around 460 tons of Fukushima wastewater will flow into the Pacific Ocean today. Kim Jung-sil starts us off by looking into the second day of Japan's 30-year-long project.
12 years. That's how long it took for Japan to be able to start getting rid of the wastewater that haunted the government since the 2011 Tohoku tsunami and earthquake disaster. The first batch of around 1.3 million tons of stored wastewater was discharged into the Pacific Ocean on Thursday. A first step toward decommissioning the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, held a press conference on Thursday and said 200 to 210 tons of wastewater will be released by Thursday midnight. From Friday, the company plans to release around 460 tons in a 24-hour window. Ahead of the release, Japan uses a filtering system called Multi-Nuclide Removal Facility, also known as ALPS. The Japanese government says ALPS can bring down all radioactive substances to below government standards except tritium. This is why Japan keeps bringing it up. Ahead of the release, TEPCO officials also announced the tritium concentration levels to the public. They conducted a check on Tuesday by mixing a liter of contaminated water with 1,200 tons of seawater. Japanese officials said the tritium concentration level was 43 to 63 becquerels per liter, far below a self-designated standard of 1,500 becquerels per liter. With the help of ALPS, Japanese officials hope to complete the discharge over the next 30 years. 3 decades is still a long time, so securing safety will be a challenge. Another big hurdle is getting rid of the fuel debris inside some of the reactors. The highly radioactive debris is a mixture of melted nuclear fuel and structures surrounding it. They were found on the floors of reactors number 1 to 3 after the 2011 disaster. Even experts in Japan are saying that getting rid of those will be a challenge. There are around 880 known tons of radioactive debris. Japan's Asahi Shimbun said not a gram of it has been taken out as of this March. Japan is working on developing robots that can do the job, but it hasn't been easy. Even with the release of the first batch of wastewater, Japan still has many tough challenges to overcome. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
With the Fukushima wastewater release now in full swing, the South Korean government is prioritizing the safety and health of its people more than ever. To do so, Seoul has stressed yet again that Tokyo keeps its pledge on transparently sharing information. Bae Eun-ji tells us more.
Soon after Japan started releasing the wastewater on Thursday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said in a briefing that what's important now is for Japan to keep its promise to the international community, to strictly follow the scientific guidelines and transparently disclose information.
Our government hopes and urges the Japanese government to disclose information about the water discharge process that will continue over the next 30 years in a transparent and responsible manner.
Noting that the South Korean government has been putting the health and safety of people in Korea first and foremost, he said excessive concern is unnecessary, and said import bans on fisheries and food products from Fukushima will be in place until public concerns are eased. This comes amid public fear and frustration in South Korea, with civic groups launching protests despite the government's reassurances. The Prime Minister also gave details on what the country has agreed upon with Japan through negotiations. First, South Korean experts will be sent to the IAEA office in Fukushima every 2 weeks to check if Japan is following IAEA safety standards and to make sure it doesn't go wrong. And second, even when the experts are not there, Japan will provide data on the wastewater released to the South Korean government every hour. Also, South Korea will be closely communicating with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Officials from the two sides that are in charge of the role will receive the latest information every single day through regular meetings that will be held virtually. Separately, the IAEA, which opened an office at the Fukushima nuclear power plant last month, launched an on-site inspection. It released new information on its website on Thursday that provides real-time data on the safety of each of the 6 steps included in the discharge process. As of 8 p.m., all 6 stages were given the green light, indicating that there were no unexpected levels of radiation, and the amount of tritium in the water was 207 becquerel per liter. Tritium is a material that will remain even after it goes through the purification system, as it's hard to separate from water. Despite concerns from Japan's local fishing groups and nearby countries, the UN nuclear watchdog had earlier approved the discharge, saying it finds the plans to be consistent with international safety standards. Arirang News.
South Korea's ambassador to the U.S. said the recent summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo has forged a remarkably strong foundation for three-way cooperation. He even said that we could see stronger cooperation now than the Quad, short for Quadrilateral Security Dialogue between the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The recent trilateral summit between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan has laid an unprecedentedly strong foundation for three-way cooperation that could foster ties under any circumstances. This is according to South Korean ambassador to the United States, Cho Hyun-dong, speaking in Washington on Thursday. Referring to the Seoul-Washington-Tokyo grouping as a small multilateral consultative body at the highest level, Cho stated that the three-way cooperation is more powerful than other multilateral bodies considered significant by Washington, such as the Quad and AUKUS. In particular, Cho emphasized that the agreements made during the summit, including the commitment to hold regular summits and ministerial-level meetings, are rare to find in other small multilateral pacts. During their summit at Camp David last Friday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, U.S. President Joe Biden, and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed to enhance their trilateral cooperation through a series of measures. These include annual three-way summits, as well as meetings involving defense, foreign affairs, commerce, and treasury ministers. Meanwhile, during the same briefing, South Korea's top diplomat in the U.S. condemned Pyongyang's latest failed attempt to launch a space rocket. North Korea on Thursday went ahead with a second attempt to put a spy satellite into orbit, but it failed due to an error in the emergency blasting system. To mark the recent attempt as a quote-unquote clear violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions, regardless of the outcome. He also called for preparedness to respond to any further provocations from Pyongyang. And following the failed launch, the South Korean ambassador also said South Korea, the U.S., and Japan would collaborate closely to develop a systematic response to North Korean threats, including imposing additional sanctions against the regime. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump surrendered at a jail in Georgia in his 4th arrest this year, this time booked on election-related charges. Though he has been released, it's worth noting that he became the first former U.S. president to ever have a mugshot taken. Yoon with the details.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has surrendered to law enforcement authorities for the 4th time this year. This time he surrendered to Fulton County Jail in Atlanta, Georgia on Thursday night, where he was charged over alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election in the state. But his visit to Atlanta was notably different from the 3 past surrenders. Rather than a courthouse, Trump was required to visit the county jail, which has a history of violence and poor conditions. And unlike in other cities that did not require him to pose for a mugshot, a booking photo of him was taken, a first in history for a former U.S. president. The booking process was brisk, merely 20 minutes, and Trump was released on a $200,000 bond, which had him quickly heading back to the airport for his return flight home to New Jersey. He insisted once again that he did nothing wrong and called the case accusing him of subverting election results a travesty of justice. In all, the former president was in Atlanta for roughly an hour and a half. In Fulton County, unlike in other jurisdictions, arraignments generally happen after a defendant surrenders at the jail and completes the booking process, not on the same day. That means Trump may have to make another trip to Georgia in the coming weeks. And unlike his previous arrests, his indictment in Atlanta was with 18 others, including his ex-chief of staff Mark Meadows and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So far, a total of 12 defendants, including Trump, have surrendered, while Trump and 10 co-defendants are now out on bail. One of the co-defendants, Harrison Floyd, who heads Black Voices for Trump, remains in custody after failing to negotiate a bond agreement. The remaining 7 co-defendants have until noon Eastern Time on Friday to turn themselves in. 이은진, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has broken his silence on the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the chief of the Wagner mercenary group. This comes just 24 hours after Prigozhin reportedly died in a plane crash. Washington believes that the plane crash could have been caused by a bomb. Lee Seung-jae with more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke on Wagner Group chief Yevgeny Prigozhin for the first time since the deadly plane accident that presumably killed the mercenary group's leader. On Thursday, Putin sent his condolences to the family of Prigozhin and recalled him being a man with a complicated fate.
As for the aviation tragedy, first of all, I want to express my sincerest condolences to the family of all the victims. I knew Prigozhin for a very long time, since the early 1990s. He was a man with a complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in life.
Putin, however, praised Prigozhin for being a talented businessman that not only worked in Russia, but also in Africa. Meanwhile, Washington has raised a number of possibilities on what caused the plane accident. While Pentagon spokesperson Pat Ryder said the U.S.'s initial assessment is that Prigozhin was killed, there's no proof that a surface-to-surface missile took down the plane, as some of the reports have indicated. However, U.S. intelligence officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity said the explosion could have been caused by a bomb or other device planted on the aircraft. The big question now is, what will the future hold for the Wagner Group? According to experts, the group's leadership structure is kept tightly under wraps, so it's unclear who will take over as the new leader, while some say it could be chosen by the Kremlin. They add that the Wagner Group could continue to play a major role in Putin's governance and will continue to hold its presence in Africa. However, others say that the recent incident could demoralize members of the mercenary group and lead to a massive exodus. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is pushing efforts to get rid of the so-called killer regulations that have been hampering businesses and different industries from further developing. That's why he presided over a meeting Thursday to find ways to encourage high-tech and emerging sector firms to develop whilst updating environmental regulations. Kim Do-yeon with the details.
To foster innovation and economic growth, South Korea will keep looking to scrap so-called killer regulations. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday, chairing a regulatory innovation strategy meeting at G-Valley Industrial Museum in Seoul, attended by various economy-related ministers and private sector representatives.
지금까지 정부는 1,400여 건의 규제 개선을 완료하는 등 규제 혁신을 위해서 많은 노력을 기울여 왔습니다. 그렇지만 현장에서는 더 과감하고 더 빠른 속도로 진행하기를 요구하고 있습니다.
One main discussion was on loosening occupancy standards on industrial complexes. Rules on who can operate at them have hindered high-tech and emerging sector firms from moving in. This is the first time in 30 years that the government has changed the rules. In addition, the complexes will have gyms, cafes, and places to socialize on site to attract more people from the younger generations. More than $18 billion will be injected for this in the next 10 years, with the expectation of there being more than 12,000 new jobs. In addition, the government is looking to update environmental standards on the production and importing of chemicals, with companies complaining regulations and restrictions are too strict. The government also reiterated its plan to expand the reception of foreign workers, with the E-74 visa quota now being capped at around 35,000 this year from the previous 2,000. To add, the government will double the allowed number of foreign employees. For example, in the manufacturing sector, companies will now be able to hire 18 to 80 foreign workers depending on their size.
총성 없는 경제 전쟁에서 한시가 급한 우리 기업들이 뛸 수 있도록 속도를 내야 합니다. 공직자들의 마인드 역시 확 바꿔 나가야 합니다. 쉽게 풀 수 있는 규제를 넘어서서 우리가 먹고 사는 문제와 직결된 꼭 풀어야 하는 킬러 규제 혁파에 우리 모두 집중해야 합니다.
The meeting comes as President Yoon, during last month's economic policy meeting, ordered for specific regulations to be repealed. According to the top office, a task force for this came up with 15 top regulations to be scrapped, and 6 of them were addressed during Thursday's meeting, with the rest to come in the next meeting. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korean companies cemented their position at the top of the global DRAM market. Their revenue saw a 20% increase globally in the second quarter of 2023 compared to the quarter before. According to Taiwanese market research firm TrendForce on Thursday, the demand for AI chips pushed SK hynix's earnings by 49% on quarter to $3.4 billion. SK was the only firm in the DRAM sector that saw a jump in market share from the last quarter, retaking the number 2 spot in the global rankings from US-based Micron. The company has been growing since it released its HBM3E chip, a high-performance memory chip that has become essential for AI. Despite seeing a drop in market share, Samsung Electronics remained atop of the rankings. We're less than a month away from the Hangzhou Asian Games that's set to take place in China after a 1-year delay due to the pandemic. And Team Korea says they're now ready more than ever. Our Song Yujin tells us just how much excitement fills the air.
The clock is ticking down to the Hangzhou Asian Games. After a 1-year delay due to COVID-19, the 16-day event will kick off on September 23rd. A record number of 12,500 athletes from 45 countries will compete in 40 sports. South Korea is sending over 860 athletes.
So with the Hangzhou Asian Games less than a month away, Team Korea's athletes are giving their all here at the Jincheon National Training Center in Chungcheongbuk-do Province.
Korea's goal? Placing 3rd in the overall medal ranking, winning 45 to 50 gold medals. 5 years ago in Jakarta, Korea stood 3rd after China and Japan with 49 gold, 58 silver, and 70 bronze. Hopes are high for the nation's swimmers. The Korean Olympic Committee predicts 6 gold, the most for any sport, led by 2-time World Championship medalist Hwang Sun-woo. Also in the spotlight is Kim Woo-min, who ranked 5th in the men's 400-meter freestyle and was the fastest Asian in the 800 meters at last month's World Championships in Fukuoka.
I believe that hard work pays off. So if I give it my all in training, I think I'll be able to race with confidence.
Korea is also known for its archery and fencing. Kim Woo-jin is the reigning men's individual archery champion. Fencer Koo Bon-gil is aiming to secure a 4th consecutive individual champion title, which would make him the most decorated Asian Games medalist from Korea.
Because our team has been doing really well, we've been getting a lot of attention from other countries. We're getting ready by watching videos of our past performances and doing physical training to boost our fitness levels.
There are exciting firsts, too. Breakdancing and esports are making their Asian Games debuts as official events.
Through competitions known as battles, we've been introducing Korea to the global dance scene. As we make our way into the world of sports, we're feeling more pride and responsibility and are pushing ourselves harder.
So as the road to Hangzhou draws closer, Team Korea is gearing up to bring some joy and excitement to those at home. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스, 진천.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, at least 3 people have been killed in a shooting at a biker bar. Another 6 have been wounded, with 2 in critical condition. The shooting occurred in the Trabuco Canyon in Southern California on Wednesday local time. Authorities say the gunman was killed in a standoff with the police and that they recovered 2 handguns and a shotgun. The gunman was identified as 59-year-old retired police sergeant John Snowling. He was reportedly targeting his wife. She is among those shot and is receiving emergency care. The shooting started during a live music show at the bar, attended by roughly 40 people. India's moon rover has taken its first drive on the lunar surface, a day after the country became the first to land near the moon's south pole. Called Pragyan, the Sanskrit word for wisdom, the 26-kilogram 6-wheeled rover departed from the Vikram lander after dust from the landing had settled. The Indian Space Research Organization says the rover will move at a speed of 1 centimeter per second. It will use scientific instruments on board to study the chemical composition of the moon's soil and nearby minerals. It will also take images to send back to Earth and gather data about the moon's surface and subsurface. India is only the 4th country to have successfully made a soft landing on the surface of the moon. Vote counting is now underway in Zimbabwe after general elections were extended by a day amid ballot paper shortages. A delay in the delivery of ballot papers forced polling stations in 40 small communities to remain open until Thursday. The Electoral Commission blamed court challenges that reportedly led to a printing delay. This comes amid concerns by human rights groups over government control of the election. On Wednesday, a local election observation center was raided by police. At least 37 people engaged in election monitoring were arrested. The election is a showdown between sitting President Emmerson Mnangagwa and opposition candidate Nelson Chamisa. Mnangagwa is looking for a 2nd term. And finally, one event at the World Athletics Championship in Budapest ended with a surprise marriage proposal. Male Slovakian athlete Dominik Černý proposed to female compatriot Hanna Brzalova on Thursday at the finish line of the 35-kilometer race walk event. The men's and women's walking races were taking place simultaneously. Černý made the proposal as Brzalova crossed the finish line and was met with an exhausted but happy yes. Černý finished his race in 19th place and clinched a personal best time, while Brzalova secured a season best finish in 28th. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We have received quite a lot of rainfall since Tuesday. The capital saw nearly 100 millimeters of rainfall until this morning. Most of the rain clouds have moved out from the peninsula, then the heat comes right back. A heat advisory has been reissued in Daejeon, Gwangju, and parts of Jeollanam-do province. And as the high humidity lingers, feels like temperatures will hover around 33 degrees Celsius for most of southern parts of the country. Then mostly sunny skies will dominate the latter half of the day, boosting UV rays to high to very high levels across Korea. And especially those on Jeju Island, you're going to have very high UV rays, so have your sun protection ready. Hot and humid afternoon for most of us today. Gwangju, Busan, and Jeju all see a high of 31 degrees Celsius. A hot and sunny weekend is in the forecast, and another band of rain is in store early next week. And that rain will finally bring an autumn breeze to the country, so hang in there for a few more days. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you this Friday afternoon. Up next is a panel discussion on what to expect now that the country's biggest internet search company, Naver, has decided to join the global AI race. As for the Daily Report, we'll see you again at this hour next week.